how we defend it legally, so like how does this even work inside a civil, like where do our privileges come from? Why do we even have this privilege inside the confession? Like how's the sacramental reality map on right to the civil law? So like I said, each state has a law. Those state laws then, however, are typically predicated off our First Amendment, right? So if you think of the First Amendment, right, so the two big ones is that, the federal government is not going to establish a religion, and two, they're not going to prohibit the free exercise of a religion, right? So these are kind of the two main clauses of that First Amendment. And I think we can look at this real fast and say, hey, like if you mandate a priest has to violate the seal of confession, right, you are violating our religious liberty. You're violating our free exercise, right? We can't actually exercise our religion the way that we want to, the way that actually predates America, because you're trying to create these laws that violate that. And I think that's a good argument. And that's where a lot of these state laws come from, is actually just enshrining that on a state level. Does that make sense? Because sometimes, don't let me drag off into my attorney jargon and, so you got to call me out every once in a while to make sure.
No, it's good.
Yeah,
okay.
To me that makes sense, because like what we're doing is precisely, and you can maybe get into this, but like the sacrament of confession, in a very real sense, it's like an act of worship. It's analogous to, it's analogous in one way to our celebration of the Eucharist. It's one of our sacraments. So,
right.
Yeah, it makes sense that to defend the state from encroaching upon that reality, we invoke the First Amendment, which protects our ability to exercise religion freely.
Yeah, and so the religious freedom for the Catholic Church, her worship and her expression of religiosity includes the sacraments.
Yeah,
particularly the seal of, or I should say, confession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say even in like a more robust way, it is a freedom, right, of religion, not just of worship, right? Because then we make these claims for like our hospitals. Because you'll actually see this is a rhetorical thing that people do. They'll actually, if you notice articles and things like this, the Obama administration was really big about this. They start talking about the freedom of worship, the freedom of worship. And actually what they're trying to do is constrain that religious liberty to like Mass on Sunday. And what they want to say is like, hey, your hospitals, your food pantries for the poor, your orphanage, etc., those aren't worship. So therefore you can't claim your religious liberties over those things. And so, like, as Catholics, obviously, we're going to have a more robust understanding of what religion is, right? Because we have the true religion. And say, no, our religion motivates us to do all of these things and can't be reduced to simply confession or any of these things. I also think free exercise is I think, the more apparent. I do think, however, you can make a good establishment clause. And this one sometimes is counterintuitive to people. But anytime the federal government steps in and starts telling us how we should run our religion, of course it's like, hey, you're prohibiting me from exercising my religion. But you can also make the argument of, hey, how are you not establishing your own religion if you're going to come in and start telling Catholics how their sacraments function, right? So you can actually reverse it too and show that the federal government is impeding on this because it's actually establishing its own religion or establishing its own religious practices.
So it's like it's not only revoking the right of a faith, but it's also establishing in a certain way the parameters of how that faith is to be lived, and its encroachment of particularly so confession in this case.
Yeah, correct. So it's not only just prohibiting the exercise of our true religion, but it's also then kind of propping up some kind of false or pseudo side that they really shouldn't be doing.